Hi, I'm Mac Rapapali.
And I'm Devil Olivier.
Welcome to episode 8 of Meat Matters, where we get to the meat of the matter on everything beef. Meat Matters is brought to us by the Red Meat Industry Forum. Are you well today, Devil?
I'm very well today. I'm very hungry, but I'm well.
No, we're going to get to the food a bit later.
Okay,
I promise you
looking
it's
for
going to
a
be
steak.
red meat. I promise you. So, Devil, often when I go shopping, I see that my meat is marked with a ink, right? And if I'm not mistaken, it's called roller marking. What does that mean? What is roller marking?
Max, so what we have in the industry to understand where does meat fit in, because you get meat that have less fat, more fat, and we've created a system whereby we mark, or SAMIC, the South African Meat Industry Company, marks. They go around and they've got a roller mark and they mark meat to understand what is inside there, inside the carcass. So, for example, we've got triple A meat, and this means that the color of that roller mark would be purple, and it means that the meat is from a young animal. And normally that is very tender meat. And then we've got ABAs and triple Bs and so on. But at the end of the day, and we've got Cs, and with that you measure the fat as well. So you get let's say an A meat from 1 to 6. So an A6 would be a young animal with more fat. An A1 would be a young animal with less fat, and so on and so forth. So it's important to understand these roller marks, and it could help you at the end of the day to choose what type of meat you use in what type of dish, for stews, for braaiing, etc. And you need to, obviously, at the end of the day, understand these roller marks to know what you buy.
So already you know South African beef is highly nutritious, and I've heard it's also packed with iron.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at worldwide what they say, and there's a lady called Ann Till. She's an international nutritionist. She says, and she talks about protein and what does it do. It builds muscles. Obviously, that's the first thing we know. But it also contains iron. Now it's almost like iron that we find in our knives and forks and so on. But it's also a nutrient essential for the transport of oxygen to the muscles, and that enables our muscles, to work efficiently. Iron is also essential for making red blood cells, which we need desperately at this stage of the pandemic, and it gives us optimal brain development and functioning, and it supports the immune system. Now, iron deficiency is a very bad form, and it's called anemia, which is the world's most common nutrient deficiency, and it causes developmental delays and reduced brain functioning. So we have to enjoy more red meat and stay at the top of our game.
Now, how important is transformation and development within the industry?
Mac, it's immensely important. We've seen over the past few years that it has grown. Female farmers are getting more and more involved, and they're staking their claim in our South African agricultural industry. But to discuss this, we are very pleased to have with us today Takalani Netchinsenze. She's the Chief Officer of External Affairs and Executive Director of Vodacom South Africa. Good day, Takalani, and thank you for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you here today. And please kindly tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Where do you come from? And about the Vodacom Foundation. What do you do there?
Thank you very much. I am Taki Nechitenje. I am the Director of External Affairs for Vodacom South Africa, and I am also the chairperson of the Vodacom Foundation. In External Affairs, our main role is to serve as the interface between the company and the business, because we recognize that in this dynamically changing world, a company that does not understand what is happening in the external environment is bound to fail. So what I do with my team, we do public affairs, which is basically advocacy on policies to ethically influence policies. We deal with regulatory issues. We've got regulators such as the communication regulator, ICASA. We also have the Consumer Commission. We also have the Competition Commission. And then we also have the foundation, which falls under me. As I said, it's part of external affairs. And then we also have sustainable development and general communication and reputation management. In the foundation, we've got two programs. It's gender empowerment, which is driven by Angela, who is here with me. And we also have education.
What I hear, Taki, is that you are lobbyists. That's how I see it. And I think from my perspective in the feedlot industry, I'm a lobbyist as well. So many times when my kids ask me, what do? I say, I drink coffee for a living. Now, that is very, very oversimplified. But maybe between you and Taki and Angela, we understand that the Vodacom Foundation do support females, and specifically in the agricultural sector in South Africa. Please tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, it's a very exciting program, and thank you very much for having us to talk about this. The context of this farming program is our partnership with UN Women and the South African Women in Farming. We started this, I think, in 2008. The program was born out of our desire to leverage our company technology to support socio-economic transformation through our CSI programs in foundation. So what had happened is that Vodacom in 2017 launched a platform, a digital platform called Connected Farmer. And this was a commercial offering for commercial farmers. However, by 2008, when we looked back, we found that the uptake was not very impressive. But on the other hand, the same platform was gaining immense traction in Kenya through Safaricom and also integrating with the mobile money platform. And we asked ourselves, why is a solution that had been developed in South Africa by a subsidiary of Vodacom called Mezzanine not being received well at home? And we decided when Angela joined the foundation, because she's very passionate about farming, that maybe we need to reintroduce that platform as a CSI initiative. And that will ensure that when you offer it as a CSI initiative, then people don't pay. It's basically part of the Vodacom Foundation to promote socio-economic transformation. And what does the technology offer? We introduced the platform with 3 phases in mind, but we had to introduce a 4th phase, which then became the first phase. And this is very interesting. How could we have started with 3 phases and then we introduced a 4th one, but it became the first one? It is because when we wanted to launch the platform with the women farmers, because the majority of them come from the rural areas, we discovered that they were not digitally literate, and therefore they were not going to be able to utilize the platform. Now, generally, we could have just walked away and said, if this is a commercial solution, we will go and look for people that are digitally literate. But because this was happening within the auspices of the foundation, we felt that we have a responsibility as the foundation to provide basic digital literacy to the users of this technology. So what we did, because we've got various integrated activities in the Vodacom Foundation. I mentioned education. So in education, we've got what we call the community development centers. They are known as teacher centers. There's a computer lab there, and it's got state-of-the-art technology where we train teachers and community members. So we took these women farmers who were digitally literate, and we put them in these teacher centers or community development centers so that they should receive basic computer literacy and also basic management skills. And I happened to attend one of the sessions without notice. And it was just so touching to see the faces and the expressions, the facial expressions on these women when they were talking about how much they are learning in this partnership with Vodacom. Most of them were actually still using 2G phones. And I remember one of the ladies saying, she removed her phone from her inside her clothes, and she said, this is my old phone, Mahlangu. I did not even know that a 2G phone, a small phone, was called Mahlangu. He said, I used to communicate using this phone. We call it Mahlangu. Now I have migrated. I am now communicating through a smartphone, and I am able to take pictures of my produce in my small farm, and I'm able to communicate this with various stakeholders that are interested in what I am doing. So we feel very proud that we did not dump these women. We gave them digital literacy. And for me, it talks to you educate a woman, you educate a nation. Then the second phase is where we digitize the SAWIF database, because we recognize that SAWIF was also using manual ways to capture the information of the farmers. And as the numbers were growing, it was becoming unmanageable. And therefore, we assisted them to digitize the database where they are able to register the women farmers, they register the farms, they register what the women are doing in the farms, and they register everything across the entire value chain. And then the next step, although the steps run simultaneously, but I'm talking about them step by step. Then the next step was then now, for those women who have received the basic computer literacy, we then started onboarding them on the platform so that we connect them through the entire agricultural value chain, mainly with the retailers and the spazzers, so that when they sell their produce and everything that they have in their farms, they should be able to do that digitally. And then the last phase will then be to integrate into this what is happening in Safaricom. I mentioned how Safaricom has integrated the platform with M-Pesa. In South Africa, because we don't have M-Pesa, are going to be integrating our financial services, because we have a financial services division now. We're going to be integrating loans, we're going to be integrating savings, and we're going to be integrating insurance. And the farmers will then make a choice of whether to take some of those offerings. And these financial services offerings are going to be add-ons, and they are going to be commercial.
This is brilliant. I'm excited as I sit here, because what we see in the value chain is normally that, and I think you started at exactly the right position to educate or to train them with regards to handling new technology. Because that's the starting point of all of it. And it's brilliant. I love it. And I think maybe from not only the RMIS position, but from myself as a feedlot representative, I'd like to get involved with this. And if you allow me, I mean, Angela, there's so much more. We, in our industry, in the agricultural industry, the livestock industry is seen as the sleeping giant. And we're starting to rise. I think there's so many things that's happening, and what we can do, it's brilliant. It's lovely. Part of this, and I'd want to ask you, I was mentioned, or I heard the name My Farm Web. Is this part of it? What is it? And can you tell us more about that? What does My Farm Web do, or is it part of this whole program?
No, My Farm Web is something that is not in the Vodacom Foundation. My Farm Web is a platform that is in Vodacom Business. So basically what we have in Vodacom Business, we have our digital transformation strategy, which is underpinned by the use of Internet of Things technologies. Yeah. And we are digitizing various industry verticals: health, education, mining, transport, and farming and agriculture is one of them. And I would say we are introducing technology in order to make farming glamorous. And I am hoping that by doing so, we will be able to attract more young people into farming, because they are going to begin to see that farming is not just about hard labor. When you introduce technology, it makes the job much easier. So our IoT in agriculture strategy focuses on subsistence farmers or small holding farmers, and also on commercial farmers. For subsistence farmers, we are ramping up what we have with the Connect, the farmer platform, which is the one that I spoke about, which we are using now in Foundation. And then for commercial farmers, we have a suite of services. So My Farmer Web is not just the only one. There are several. So we've got My Farmer Web platform, which assists in the main with the effects of climate change. Because remember, I mentioned that I am also responsible for sustainability. Yeah. And now we are integrating technology to assist us with our sustainability initiative. So the My Farmer Web platform assists with monitoring soil moisture. It monitors the texture of the leaves of the plants as they grow, or the mushroom of the ground. It assists to monitor the weather patterns. Why is this important? I remember when I grew up, I used to work in the garden because my father asked me to choose chores. Do I want to mop the floors or do I want to work in the garden? And I chose working in the garden. And the plants that we used to produce in winter 20 years ago, today you can find them in summer. And that shows that climate change is actually changing the way we do business from a farming perspective. So what my Farmer Web platform does, by assessing the texture of the soil, it helps the farmers to be able to determine, without waiting for the season to come, whether the soil is good and nurtured enough for them to be able to plant something. By monitoring the weather, it also helps them to deal with issues like, if the season is too dry, fires can be devastating. Then preventive measures can be put in place. If it's rainy season, you know that floods can also be devastating to the farmers. Then they are able to put measures in place. And then we also have an asset management system. We are able to integrate the security system. And this is at the back of the farm matters, where you've got beams, you've got CCTV cameras. We are able to give the farm owner a single view of what is happening from a security perspective in his or her own farm. And we're also able to monitor water management. So, you know, farmers have got small dams in their own farms. We're able to put sensors there. And if the water levels drop drastically, the sensors are able to send a message to say you are losing water and therefore put preventive measures in place. And it also helps with water leakages because South Africa is a water scarce country. We lose most of our water through leakages, although there's also evaporation. And therefore, by having an IoT-based solution in order to manage water, it assists to ensure that water is not lost unnecessarily.
The passion with which you're talking and the energy is brilliant. I mean, I love it, and I love the fact that there's technology being used in our lovely industry. Yes, this is one of those points where you'd like to tell and ask: is there a way that women in agriculture can contact you? What's the way how they do this? Do they speak to you directly, or their agents, or how do they come in contact? Because I mean, the ladies that you've already trained and so on and helped, I can tell you there are many more of them out there who would like to get involved in agriculture and whose passion is agriculture, because we need more farmers. That's what it's about. How do they come in contact with you, ladies?
Okay, it's angela.abrahams@vodacom.co.za. They can also call me on my cell. It's 066 474 3888. We'd be happy to engage with them. Yeah. And we'd be happy to engage with you as well.
Yes, please. I'd like to speak to you because there's so many plans and so many things going on. Takalani and Angela, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. And we appreciate what you do, not only in the digital realm, but what you do for the agricultural industry. This is amazing. I love it. And we'd like to speak to you further at a later stage. Thank you very much for joining us.
Now, Dewald, tell us, how important is animal health to our industry?
Mac, well, animal health is actually the basis of everything that we do in our industry. It is so important that we got Dr. Peter Obram here today, and I'd like to welcome you, Peter. Please tell us more about yourself, where you are. You're from AfriVet. What do you do? And welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I'm a veterinarian, and as you can see, one with long experience, pretty old. It's almost as long as my hair now. COVID has obviously had some impact on our fashions these days. But I've been a veterinarian now since 1980, so that's over 40 years. I've been in industry after having studied entomology, ticks, and tick-borne diseases in particular, and having done research on those at Onderstepoort. I've been in the industry since 1990. During the year 2000, when there was a lot of consolidation in the industry, I formed my own company called AfriVet to utilize the knowledge that was built up over that time. You asked a question about how important is animal health. Well, there's no animal production and no food if animal health is neglected.
Now, Peter, how do you then monitor, in assisting to help keep our animals in top health, in top shape?
Well, the monitoring, in a sense, is done via a whole network of veterinarians, some that work for us, but many private veterinarians that supply information to what we call VNet these days. And so we know very early on where diseases begin and from there how they spread.
Peter, one of the things that we currently face and have been facing for a long time in South Africa is foot and mouth disease.
Yes.
Now, as a veterinarian and us being in the industry, we understand the disease to a certain extent, but the people watching this do not necessarily understand it. Can you explain to us what is foot and mouth disease, what does it do, and how do we treat it?
Yes. Well, foot and mouth is a viral disease. It's an ancient disease. It's been around for centuries, actually. And in many cases, as things happen, the disease and the host adapt to live with each other. We'll probably see it later with COVID. If you've got too many mortalities, there's no host for the virus to live in. And so they tend to adapt and become more closely associated, and you see less and less disease and death with that specific association. And that's exactly what we've seen with foot and mouth disease, and it's actually very important. Foot and mouth disease, is, as I said, is an older disease. There's been controls put in place, particularly after huge outbreaks in the 60s, I think, if I remember correctly, 50s, 60s, in Europe. And they put in a very strict, a very good method to control the disease. What we need to remember is that their animals were never exposed to foot and mouth disease. They were totally naive. And like us with COVID, the mortalities in the beginning were very high. A dairy cow, stud dairy cow in particular, in the middle of the UK, chances that it dies and loses all its milk production is massive. It is different here in South Africa, well, in Africa actually, because this is where the disease developed and where the animals actually learned, evolved to be less severely affected, and where the virus itself evolved to cause less damage. It seems that it began in buffalo, African buffalo. And African buffalo are not affected at all, but they are the carriers. Our African cattle, especially those that we see in the homelands, former homelands here, are very slightly affected sometimes. People generally don't even see the symptoms because a little bit of crippleness, a little bit of extra salivation, maybe a sore in the mouth or wound on the foot, not easily noticed unless you're really there looking. So the effect on our animals is negligible. The effect of exporting it, an animal like that, and it carries the virus and it goes to the UK, for example, is dramatic because in the UK we're going to see huge impact. So actually the control measures were developed very specifically for European type cattle, naive cattle, shall we say. They're very strict, they're very expensive and very, very onerous to implement. So we have to have a fence between us and Zimbabwe, which, as you know, just ain't there because
and it doesn't work.
For many reasons, amongst others, just don't have the money.
Yeah.
We're supposed to monitor our animals at the 5,000 dip tanks that the government has put up in the country in order to monitor for the disease. But we don't have enough people, don't have enough expertise to do that. So all of a sudden, somebody spots it and there's a big crisis. For that reason, it's really important that we look to new ways of controlling the disease. With foot and mouth, there is this very expensive control methodology, which is based on geography. In other words, your country is positive, there are foot and mouth cases there, you may not export. And that really is crippling our meat industry. Dewald will know better, I think 80 billion rands worth of production. With a little bit of help, we could export 30% more, actually, than we currently do, or 30% of that production plus. And as a result, we really need to relook at the method of control. And there is another one accepted by the World International Animal Health Body, the OIE.
Yeah.
And that is the commodity, the product that I'm producing clean? And there's many new technologies that now exist, diagnostic technologies, vaccines, and other methods that one can utilize to control the disease, other than just discriminating against the country, where the disease is natural. Remember, it's natural in our buffalo.
Now, Peter has been involved in a very important project. Some of you'll know it as, Project Matsetse, Letsetse. In this case, it's Tsetse fly issues. Please update us on that.
Well, one of my passions in life is the fact that our population in the world is going through the roof. We know that. We expect to have by 2050 9 billion people, all of whom who need food. Today, and I don't want to make a mistake, but I read a document about hunger. There's something like 275, and I might have a couple of figures wrong here, 275 million people who are not getting enough food in the world. Something like 90% of those, 230 odd million, are in Africa. Mm. And sub-Saharan Africa is another 90% of those. So we have something like 250 million people in sub-Saharan Africa that are starving. And we have the means to feed them. We have animals here which are not productive. Not productive because we don't look after their animal health properly. And unfortunately, I have to say, in many cases, there's no focus on production, or animal health and production. Well, one of the big constraints to proper production in the KwaZulu-Natal area is Nagana. It's a trypanosome, it's a unicellular organism that you find in the blood. I remember as a student, I loved them because I'm a visual person, and they're beautiful little surfboard-shaped things with a little sail on the top. And it sort of reminded me of my youth being down at the sea.
Yeah.
But they're beautiful to see. But they totally destroy animal production. Those animals just don't do well at all, and many of them die. It's actually a disease, like foot and mouth disease, that you should report annually to the OIE. But there's semantics around it. There's African trypanosomiasis, and there's trypanosomiasis, and there's sleeping sickness, which is the same type of organism that people get. And so it's not being reported. And it's quiet. But just go to KwaZulu-Natal. Go and have a look at the animals at the dip tanks, especially in the former homelands. There's huge numbers. And the geographic area is almost from Mozambique down to the Tugela. What happened was in 1954, that's when I was born, So I can take no credit for that.
No wonder why you're still young.
What happened then was that there was an eradication program, and they sprayed the countryside all around the parks in KZN, because that's where Nagana is found, where the tsetse fly found, to kill the tsetse fly. They did not spray for ecological reasons, environmental reasons inside the parks. And that's where the mosquitoes survived and slowly spread, moving out. So from a production point of view, it's a disaster waiting to happen unless we recognize it and do something about it.
Thank you. I'd like to, Peter, what AfriVet is doing for us, and I think you've got a huge contribution that your company is making. Thank you very much. Your comments with regards to commodity-based trading, I think you're spot on, and I think that's where we're moving towards within the industry as well. In this, I'd like to recognize Professor Gavin Thompson.
Absolutely.
I'd like to say it. Professor Gavin Thompson passed in, I think it was May this year, because of cancer. And he had an immense and a tremendous contribution he made towards our industry, foot and mouth disease in particular, and how we deal with it. So to him, and he launched, or you on his behalf did a book after that, yes, recognizing his work and foot and mouth disease. But brilliant work, and thank you very, very much for what you're doing to our industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Mac Rapapali, and on behalf of Dewald Olivier and the South African Feedlot Association, thank you for joining us on Meat Matters. See you on the next episode for more on the best of beef. Be healthy, be safe, and keep enjoying South African beef.
Thank you, Mac. Enjoyed it.
You're so cute.